Good day, everyone. I am Mr. Joel H. Angalan, and I will be reporting to you about office correspondence. So, this video will talk about letter of intent, project proposal, and action plan. I will be including here the basic features of the three office correspondence mentioned, and at the same time, I will also be giving tips on how to write a good action plan, how to write a good project proposal, and how to write a good letter of intent. So let us now discuss each office correspondence mentioned one at a time, and let's start it with letter of intent. So what is letter of intent? So when we say letter of intent, its definition depends on what discipline we are actually talking about. So let us now take this first definition. LOI is a document outlining the understanding between two or more parties which understanding the intent to formalize in a legally binding agreement. So based on its definition, LOI or letter of intent has similar concept with terms of or heads of agreement, term sheet, and even memorandum of agreement. But let us not focus to that because that is merely focusing on or trying to refer to a certain company running a business. But let us focus its definition that would fit to our field, to our profession as teacher. So first, when we say letter of intent, it is simply a statement of purpose. And at the same time, it is also a letter of motivation. So when we say letter of motivation, which is also known as the statement of purpose, is actually a letter or a document where you describe your professional competence and your personal motivation. So, for example, if you're going to apply for a certain position, so you are simply writing a letter wherein in your letter, this would actually shows your professional competence and your motivation on why you are applying for that certain position. Next is a personal statement because it is you, it is your intention that you are actually writing and what is your purpose of your letter. So that's actually personal statement. And the other one is cover letter. So when we say cover letter, it is a one-page letter in which in which a letter or it is actually a letter of introduction attached to or accompanying with a document such as curriculum vitae and resume. Now, since letter of intent includes your personal information, so these are the following that you may include. First is educational background. Of course, that is very, very important for you to let the other party about your educational attainment because a company, a department, an office really requires a certain applicant to include educational background in their letter of intent because that is one of their basis as you are qualified, as to you are qualified to a certain position you are applying for. And then the second one is your past and present, particularly referring to your experiences, which of course the experiences that you are going to include, and if since you are applying for a certain position, it is actually related to the position that you are applying for. And then it also includes your abilities, your skills and talents, and at the same time, your personality. Now, in writing your LOL, sometimes reflect what personality you have, because the manner, the tone in your LOI, once you are going to write it, there are things there that you have written might actually shows of who you are. For example, the tone perhaps would actually show arrogance of your personality. That is why it is very, very important, and you have to be very, very careful in writing your letter of intent. And then it also includes your future career plans and your extracurricular activities. Now, in writing or including your extracurricular activities in your LOI, you have to make it sure that these activities you have attended is also related to a position that you're actually applying for. Now, what is the purpose of LOI? So, LOI used in several things, no, in several ways. So first is for application essay. So in the academe, particularly in the Department of Education, application, LOI is part of the application process. No, it is part of the application process. And another one, Loi also is used for reservation, particularly in the United States of America. Certain students could actually write a letter of intent for reservation of a certain scholarship grant while the student's still in high school. For example, a scholarship grant in sports. Now, so a student could actually write a letter of intent for that matter. And then it is also used for notification, particularly um, in purchase of property. So it is actually happened in a real estate. So for example, in cases where the real property in question is not listed on a multiple listing service, there may not be an easy way to notify the owner of the property and other interested parties of the intent to purchase. So often, it is necessary to officially begin the process of a purchase and allow all peripheral interested parties to begin any other processes with a letter of intent. Another purpose of letter of intent is for approval of new created organizations. It usually happens in the academe. So, for example, in your school, if you're actually creating a new organization, you cannot simply create immediately. But of course, you have to write a letter of intent, perhaps to the office of the principal, and then the principal we're going to submit that one to the division office, and the school's division superintendent will actually approve that. That if there is no letter of intent, then your newly created organization might not be approved. And another one, it is also used for solicitation of government grants. So in the solicitation of government grants, a letter of intent is highly encouraged, but it is not required or binding, and does not enter into a review of a subsequent application. Okay, so let us now start discussing on how to write an LOI. Go. Okay, so these are the things you have to consider before writing an LOI. First is that you have to know your career goals. So for example, what is your purpose of writing an LOI? So you have to be clear for that. Next is that what skills do you have? So for example, if you intend to apply for a certain position in your school and then you are asked, or that is actually a part of the application process, which is writing an LOI. So you have to assess yourself, if what skills do you have? Do you have those skills needed for a certain position? Okay, next is that you have to be unique. Now, so meaning to say, what is unique about you? That actually does this uniqueness fit on the position you are actually applying for? So here are the following steps on how to write an LOI. First is that know about your audience. To whom this LOI to be sent off. So who is actually reading this letter of intent? So you must have to be aware of that. Next is that focus on your writing ability, and 10, be clear about your goals. You have to set your goals clearly before you are going to write an LOI. Next one is be to the point. Do not hit around the bush. Direct to the point in your letter. And then be unique. And if there is a requirement about the qualities requirement of a certain institution, so you have to brainstorm, you have to study about it, so that when you are going to start writing your LOI, you must have to know what are the things to write in your letter. Okay, now what should be the style and the tone of your LOI? So first is your vocabulary. Now, when you're going to write your LOI, as much as possible, it must be simple. You don't have to use words that are so deep wherein it is very hard to understand. Be simple. Second is that you have to also have the knowledge on the use of the proper or the appropriate use of verb tense. So in the same with any other letter, it is very, very important for you to know how to use this verb tense properly. Then the last one is your sentence structure. It is recommended, however, it is not actually wrong that you're going to use passive voice in writing your letter of content. However, it is recommended to use active voice. So, when you're going to write your LOI, you have to make it sure that the tone must be not too formal and at the same time not too casual. So let us examine the following statements or phrase that actually if it is too formal or too casual. So let's take this one. You see what I mean. I am the right man for the position. I think this is a good program for me. Lots of things affected my success. Is it too formal or is it too casual? So if we're going to examine the statements given, it is too casual. Because if we're going to examine it as if that you are only writing a letter of intent to your friends, to your best friends, okay? So let us always remember that when we're going to write an LOI, we have to make it sure that we are to win this too formal and too casual. Another example statements are the following. First is, it seems to me that I have the qualifications that position requires. I strongly believe that the program will facilitate my long-term career aspirations, and there were many factors which enabled to achieve my goals. So if we are going to examine the statements given, is it too formal or is it too casual? So I think it is too formal. Okay, so now if you are going to write your LOI, make it sure to avoid cliches. Okay, so what are this? These are the example cliches that you are going to avoid. First, when I completed the project, I had learned the value of hard work. Next, this experience broadened my horizon. Next is, I've always wanted to live abroad to experience a new culture. Next, I really want to study at X university. So, in other words, when you're going to write your LOI, you have to be very simple. Do not make your LOI as complicated as your love life. So make it simple. You have to avoid cliches which no longer necessary in your LOI. And might be when you are going to include those cliches that might sounds or that might shows arrogance in your LOI. Remember that sometimes the content of our LOI reflects our personality. Now, if you are done doing your LOI, you have to edit your LOI. So what are the things that you're going to edit? First is the structure. The second one is the style. And then, of course, the content. So here are the following checklists that you might use when you are going to edit your letter of intent. First is your LOI relevant to your purpose? Okay, so if it is relevant, then it's okay. So if it is not relevant, so you have to rewrite your, or you are going to edit your letter of intent. Next is, does it has repetition of information? So you are going to check there if there are informations repeatedly written in your LOI. Next is your LOI interesting enough? Is it impressive to the one that is actually reading it? Next is, does it all acquire all the information expected from you? Or did you include, or you might actually include information about you there which is no longer needed in your LOI. So you have to omit that one. And then, are there any unnecessary details about yourself? Perhaps you include already there an information which is no longer related to your purpose. Now, for example, if you're applying for a certain position, it's no longer related to the position you are applying for. Next is, does your LOI reflect yourself? Does it shows arrogance? Or is it just shows a personality which is actually a certain employer is, most of certain employer are actually looking for? Then do the paragraphs follow each other smoothly? So you have to check also the coherences, no, of the paragraph present in your LOI. Are the sentences clear and well organized? Then do you show evidence to support your statements? So for example, if you have actually written there a statement which actually needs evidence, that is the evidence actually present to support your statements? And then does your LOI say everything directly? Or it's actually your LOI is hitting around the bush, it is not actually direct to the point. So if after looking to the following checklist that I actually mentioned, so meaning to say that your LOI is now uh, ready for sending, ready to be sent to whom you are actually intend to send your LOI. So another checklist, are there various sentence structure in your LOI? Again, the sentence structure, it is discouraged that most of the time you are going to use passive voice. And then, have you avoided passive voice? Are there unnecessary adjective? Maybe you actually include adjective there, which is no longer, or it's actually super, shall we say, it's hyperbole. It is exaggerated already, especially if it actually the adjective is describing you as a person and it sounds already exaggerated. So you have to avoid that one also. Then, do you connect the sentences and paragraph using transition signals? Meaning to say, after this paragraph, after this sentence, does it actually connect with the other, with the sentence, or it's the first sentence is no longer related to the second sentence? And then, is your tone too formal, or is your tone too informal? So, other the way around, your LOI must not be too formal and at the same time must not be too informal. So, things to do when you are going to write your LOI, you have to be accurate. You have to be very confident. Confident in a sense that you don't look boastful. Okay? And then be clear and to the point. Do not, again, hit around the bush. You have to target the point. You have to directly say your purpose to the point. Then be sure your LOI does not have any technical errors. So it is very, very important. We're going you where when you are going to write anything, no, an essay which is to be submitted. So let us all be conscious of the technical errors, particularly on the spelling, the punctuation, the style, and others. Another one is do not use complicated sentence. Make your sentence simple. That's it. And then do not use too much adjectives without support. Because if you don't have the support, perhaps you are actually lying or perhaps you are just exaggerating. And then do not mention that the position or programs has always been your dream. Okay? So just state your purpose, your personal intention, your motivation of why you are actually applying for that certain position or you want to be in that certain program. And do not use passive voice all the time. But again, it doesn't mean that you will no longer use passive voice um, in your LOI. But you can use, but not most of the time. Now, things to avoid without support. So these are the words when you are going to include there, you are actually going to include the important. So when you are going to say to include, for example, important, for example, important something, so you have to support it. You have to play to include a support for your statement. Another one is useful, interesting. Why you are interesting? So you have to support. Satisfying. Why is it satisfying? So you have to give your support. Why is it useful? So you have to give your support. Good, like, significant, excited, exciting, love. So these are some of the words that when you are going to use it in your sentence, in your LOI, make it sure that you are going to have your supporting statements on this. So here are the sample letter of intent and template. So here, if you could actually see, so this is a letter of intent, which is this is a general template on writing a letter of intent. First is the letterhead. If there's you are actually using a black style in your letter, so letterhead, so, or the return address of sender and the date, and then it is followed by a name of a person, address, name of a company or organization, and then salutation, and then your body of your letter, and then your closing part, and then your signature na, which is signature over printed name. So I have here another example of letter of intent, which is actually used in school. So let me read this. You have to write first the return address, your address, and then the date of letter. Then, for example, here, Mr. Johnson Harrison, Office of Admissions, Graduate School of Public Affairs, Columbia University, 325 West 12th Street, Room 604, New York, New York. Okay. Then, dear Mr. Harrison, this letter is to inform you that I have submitted an application for the 2010-2011 Mayor's Graduate Scholarship Program. I am a New York City employee applying to your Master's in Public Administration graduate program for admission in the fall of 2010. Please consider my applications for your graduate program. Okay, so that is also an example of letter of intent. So if you want to, if you're applying now for a scholarship in a certain school, so you could actually use the LOI for that. And then this one, if you are actually offering a job, so you could also write a letter of intent for this. So example, this letter is in reference to your candidature submitted in our company. We take pleasure in offering you the position of a sales executive in our organization. So, meaning to say, a certain company could also write a letter of intent offering a job. It is not just, it is not always, it is not always that um, you are going to write a letter of intent merely for more on application purposes. Okay, so here are some of the template of the job letter of intent. Okay, now we are done on letter of intent, and I hope that that helps you when you are going to write your letter of intent. So let us now proceed to project proposal. So what is a project proposal? A project proposal is an initial steps to get the project off the ground. So meaning to say, if you want to have a project, so you are going to make first a project proposal. So it is very, very important because, for example, in your school, if you're going to write a project, if you want to do something, especially if it would actually help your clientele, particularly your students. So you are actually planning to make a project. So you have to write a project proposal for it. Remember that project proposal is a document wherein you need to accomplish first because um, in a certain institution, when we say project proposal, when you are going to write a project proposal, so it means that you are actually asking for a certain budget so that you could actually implement the said project or the planned project. So that is why it is defined as initial document used to define an internal or external project. It is also a document that describes a proposed project and its purpose, outcomes, and steps that will be taken to complete the project. Now, 5 basic features of a good proposal. First is compelling content. So meaning to say, when you're going to write your proposal, your project proposal, it must be impressive. You have to impress your audience, particularly, for example, your principal. Make it sure that everything is there. The things that they need to know is there. So the content is very, very important, and it must be compelling and it must be impressive. Next is flawless language. Again, it is very, very important that you have to check your proposal, the errors, the technical errors, particularly your grammar, everything, no, everything, because you are actually submitting it. You let your superior, your principal, or if it is actually sent to the division's office. So make it sure that uh, the errors are actually checked and being corrected. Next, client focused. So here, when you're going to write a proposal, make it sure you know who are your customers. For example, if it is a business proposal, who are your customers? Who are your stakeholders? Who are your partners? So you have to very, very clear for that. Okay. Um, who are the beneficiary of your project? So it must be clearly stated in your proposal. Then pricing. So in business plan or in business proposal, bidding is actually um, a requirement. No, it is actually a requirement. But in a proposal, for example, a project proposal in your school, so perhaps you are just going to include here the budget proposal. Um, the money that is needed for you to start implementing your project. So that is in pricing. Now, your proposal also must be brief and to the point. No? So make it sure that, again, though your proposal is brief, but everything is there. Meaning to say, when the principal or the superintendent were going to read that, no more asking question because everything is there and they already understand what you are actually trying to point out there. Now, how to write a project proposal. So first step is you are going to define the problem. So of course, just like any scientific inquiry, first is you're going to observe. So for example, in your community, what are the problems? And then after observing those things, of course, you have to define your problem. So what's the problem is trying to address? Why is it a problem? And why is it worth solving? Okay? So you have to make it sure that when you are going to define a problem, make it sure that it is really a problem that needs solution. Now, tips for defining a problem. So first is that you have to start strong. So decision makers usually don't allot much time to look over a proposal. So make sure that the pain point is succinctly described and in a manner that resonates with them. So meaning to say, you don't have to make your proposal so lengthy, and make it sure that when you are going to write your proposal, you have to start strong. So from that, when they are going to read your proposal, they will immediately be persuaded and convinced that they have to support your proposal. Next is that use facts, not opinion. So for example, if you're stating a problem, so it is the problem, for example, in your community. Okay. Then after defining this problem, of course, you have to state, you have to write your problem, and then at the same time, when you are already writing or setting up your problem, writing your problem, stating your problem, of course, you have use facts that this is really the reality in the community, in your school, no, in your workplace. So do not use opinionated statements. So make it sure that you are going to use facts, that this is really the real thing or the real situation that happening in our workplace, in our community, or even in our in a community where we live in, no, in school, in our barangay. Okay, so next step is you are going to present your solution. Now, when you're going to present your solution, make sure that how will you project solve the problem? Okay, so meaning to say, you are going to present a series of steps. Make sure that the steps are clear. No? Then why is your solution is better option over other similar solutions? If there are already existing solutions, if a certain problem was already being solved, and the manner of solving the problem is different from yours, make sure that you have to let them know that why your solution is better option than the other similar solutions. Now, tips for presenting your solution. So first is that anticipate questions and objections. Of course, when you're going to make your project proposal, of course, you are going to defend it. You have going to present it. and then you are going to defend it. So when you are going to present your solution, so you have to anticipate questions. And of course, there are objections in your presentation of your solution. And make it sure that you are ready also to defend those presented solutions of yours and ready to answer questions. So that is why it is very, very important that when you're going to write a project proposal, make sure that you are the one actually writing it, because there are times that your principal will let you present it, and then perhaps there are queries if your project proposal is not really that good. So perhaps they are going to ask you questions. So make it sure that you are ready to answer the question. So that is why it is nice if you will not let others to make your project proposal. Then present the solution's larger impact. So meaning to say, when you have the solutions, make it sure that it actually ano, um, the solution that you are actually presented is in a larger impact, not just merely on a very small shall we say, the in a smaller impact, not just in a smaller impact, but it should be in a larger impact. Then again, when you are going to present your solution, you have to use facts over opinionated solutions. No? Perhaps some you are going to say there, you are going to present that uh, these are actually used by this actually use or the solution that I'm actually using or presenting is actually used already and be actually proven effective, that it actually solve your solve the problem. However, you have to actually make sure that it's a fact. So when it is actually a fact, when you are actually presenting your solution, so make it sure that it's a fact. No, it is supported by a fact. So next step is define your deliverables and success criteria. So here you are going to provide a picture of the functions and attributes of the deliverable, plus how to know if the project is successful. So tips for defining deliverables. Okay, so first is include a delivery date. So it is very, very important that you are going to define what your project will deliver and what users can expect from it, such as a cloud-based phone system that is accessible 24/7, for example. Also, it indicates when you plan to complete its deliverable. So meaning to say, you have to make it sure that there is a duration of your project proposal. Then your solution must be smart. Again, um, it must be specific, measurable, attainable, reliable, and time bounded. Okay. Next step is state your plan approach. So this includes your strategy. Now you are going to discuss here how to achieve the project's objective. So you are going to include here your strategic plan on how to make your project proposal a successful one. Okay, next is explain the approach explain the approach, the relevance, and effectiveness of the project, how the project will be managed. So next is tips for planning. So this is more on the strategies that you are trying to employ in your proposal, in your project proposal. So first is introduce strategies. So um, you are going to include there your strategies on how you are going to um, make your project proposal a success. So will you be using the traditional waterfall approach? So if so, why? Will be using a third party contractors, or what will their objectives and responsibilities be? So this is your opportunity here in this um in this step. This is your opportunity to discuss the why behind the decisions you're making to get the project completed. So next is explain how the problems will be addressed. Of course, we cannot actually avoid that there are problems when we are going to implement already, or when we are going to start implementing already our proposal, our project proposal. So it is already um, it is already part of the process that we will be actually experiencing problems along the way. So make it sure that if that would actually happen, you have already a risk assessment regarding on this, so that um, when the problem arise, then you know already how to address certain problems. Next step is outline your schedule and budget. So break down project cost and detail on how will you meet deadlines. So here in this step is that you are going now to make a budget proposal here, wherein that includes how much really the project will cost, because you are actually asking for a funding for your project proposal, and that is actually what project proposal is all about. So for example, if you need funds, where it is actually coming from, your sources of your funds, is it personal, or you are actually trying to make partners, no, from uh, outside, for example, as stakeholders, no, a certain organization, a certain company, which you are going to make them as your partner, wherein of course when they are your partner, so they are the ones that is actually funding your project proposal, because in return perhaps they are also benefited of your proposed project. Okay, so of course you have also to includes the detail on how you will meet deadlines. So tips for defining a schedule and budget. So provide as much detail as possible. So as much as possible, you have to be very, very detailed in defining your budget in particular, and of course your schedule. Okay, so next is be concrete and never guess. Now, provide project start and end times, and if certain sections of the project can be done simultaneously. Now, in for example, if you are planning, no, you are actually proposing for a budget, of course, there are materials, for example, needed in your proposal. So make it sure that you have to be concrete, meaning to say, if if a certain if a certain if a certain material costs how much, then do not guess. Make it sure that you also research for for the cost of that certain material, so that you will not be merely more on estimating your budget. And might be that when you are going to estimate, perhaps that's one of the reasons that the budget that you propose is not enough uh, to implement your proposed project. So next step is you have to tie it all together. So what does it mean? So you are going to sum up, no? You are going to sum up your proposal. So there is a summary of your proposal. Here you have to end your proposal with a conclusion that briefly summarizes the problem and then the solution you have presented, and of course the benefits also of the said project. And then you have also to emphasize the significant parts and make your proposal stand out by restating your ideas or facts you want your audience to remember. Okay. So tips for trying everything together. So when you are going to um, sum up, no, your proposal, make it sure that your proposal should read like a book. So when it is actually a book, it is already complete. Everything is there. No, um, it is a book, for example, that already tells us the entire story. So meaning to say that everything is there in your proposal, and um, no need or no need of questions to be asked when as a principal or a supervisor or a superintendent will going to read your proposal. Then make it sure that you have to refrain from introducing anything doesn't fit. So for example, you are introducing something or perhaps a solution to a certain problem, where in fact the solution that you are actually trying to offer or trying to present does not actually fit to the problem that you are trying to solve. Then make sure that all project proposal elements are present, no? So in the first part of our video, I discussed to you the basic features of a good proposal, and make sure that all those elements are present in your proposal. Now, of course, if you have done writing your proposal, of course, do not immediately print it and then submit it without editing or proofreading it. Okay, so first is that rewrite your proposal as necessary to make it interesting, helpful, clear, and persuasive. So perhaps you might ask, or you might actually collaborate or ask opinion, ask ideas from your colleagues, so that your proposal is really interesting, helpful, clear, and persuasive. Next is ask for feedback and ensure the proposal is organized and visually appealing. So of course, now the entirety of your proposal reflects your personality. So of course, if let us not actually be a person that knows everything. Even though we are already expert on a certain thing, it is still necessary for us to ask feedback now, so that from that feedback we could actually learn a lot and make our work a better and even the best. Now, tips for editing your proposal. First is that you have to check the tone language. You can make it sure same as for your letter of intent, meaning your proposal, the tone language of your proposal still is in between too formal and too informal. Then check grammar, punctuation, or spelling mistakes. Okay, so if you are not really good in grammar, so perhaps you might ask an English teacher or somebody that would actually could help you in checking your grammar. Okay, so there's no wrong if you are going to seek help. From that, you will be learning again. Okay, so we are done now on the concept of project proposal, its basic features, its purpose, and at the same time, how to write a good project proposal. And I hope that those informations that I gave you would actually help when you are already or when you are going to write your project proposal, especially that in our department this time, it is already required that each teacher must have write or present or submit a project proposal. So this time, let us now continue discussing about action plan. So what is an action plan? So when we say action plan, it is a detailed plan outlining actions needed to reach one or more goals. So it can be defined as a sequence or steps that must be taken or activities that must be performed well for a strategy to succeed. Now, why you need an action plan? Especially for us teachers, why do we need an action plan? In our IPCRF, at the last part there, we are going to write our action plan there. So, what is that for? So, what really the purpose of the action plan? So, if you're planning for something and you are going to write it formally in a black and white, so you're going to write your action plan, so it will give you a clear direction. So it will guide you, for example, to the things that you want to achieve. For example, in your teaching career, in your professional growth, no, as teacher. So if you are going to plan, for example, to be good in a particular in a particular thing, so if you're going to write it in an action plan, then this will guide you to where you are going. And then having your goals written down and planned out in steps will give a reason to stay motivated and committed throughout the project. So, for example, if you have already this action plan and then, of course, you have already started doing it, and then you see there in your plan that a portion or a portion of your plan is already being attained or completed. So perhaps you might actually get motivated in doing, in pursuing and continuing your action plan. And I mean, you will be motivated in completing your action plan or things that you are actually planning to do. So why you need an action plan? Again, you can track your progress toward your goal. Okay, so later on, I will be discussing to you on how you're going to do this. Then next is, since you are listing down all steps you need to complete in your action plan, it will help you prioritize your task based on effort and impact. So for example, if you have already there the steps on how you are going to complete or to accomplish, no, your action plan, from that, so you can actually see there what are those steps that you are going to prioritize now based on for example effort. So for example, this step requires more time, this steps requires more effort, so this should be um, prioritized first. Okay, and then the next thing is how you are going to write your action plan. So first is you have to define your end goal. So your purpose, your objective, why you are actually writing that plan. So what is your purpose of writing that plan? Why you are planning? So for example, if your end goal is to be more um, effective in your teaching. So you have to define that. Okay. So define where you are. So for example, from now, where you are. And then from where you are, where you want to be. Okay. Where you want to be. So that is how you are going to define your end goal. Then when you have already your goal, your objective, make sure that your objective follow the SMART criteria again. So it should be SMART, measurable, attainable, reliable, and time bounded. Okay? So any plans, any objective, must be smart. Even in your ambitions in life of who you want to be in the future, you are actually, for example, aiming for a certain thing, a house, a lot, a car. So you have to be very, very smart of your goal. So you could actually use this worksheet here if you are going to write your a goal. So it is actually following the SMART criteria. Now, how to write an action plan? The second step is you have to list down the steps to be followed. Okay. So what exactly should you do to realize it? No. So here, if you're going to make it, so a very good thing that you're going to do this is that you're going to perhaps create a template that would actually make your steps organized. No? Okay. So example for this is this one. So the task. So what is the first one that you're going to do? So for example, if it is a team plan, so you have to write the name of the person assigned to each of the tasks you are going to that you actually included in your plan. So of course, you have to include there the duration of the task, now, so that you will be guided, and you will really try to make your best in order for you to accomplish your plan. Next step is your prioritize tasks and deadlines. Now, it is time to reorganize the list by prioritizing the tasks. And of course, um, when you are going to prioritize, no, um, there might be actually in your steps, no, that actually created on how to make your action plan a success. So from that, so you are going to make it sure that those listed steps, now you could actually um, evaluate there which of those steps requires more effort, requires more time, and then which of those steps should be in the first priority. Okay? So, um, in this step, it is time to reorganize the list by prioritizing the tasks. So some steps you may need to prioritize as they can be blocking other sub steps. No. Okay? So another one, no, you are going to add deadlines. No? You are going to add deadlines and make sure that they are realistic. Okay? Meaning to say, if you're going to prioritize and then you are going to set deadlines for this task, now for this step, and then when you are going to make your set your deadline for that, and then if it is actually attainable, is it really attainable for that time frame you actually set for that certain task. So step 4 is you have to set milestones. So when we say milestones, this can be considered mini goals leading up to the main goal at the end. So for example, milestone 1, this is actually, or simply the first step, the first thing that you're going to do. Okay, from that bigger goal, no, the main goal of yours. So you are going to make or set a milestone, no, a mini goals. Where in this mini goals, once they are accomplished, so this would actually bring you closer and closer to your main goal. Next is you have to identify the resources needed. Ensure that you will have all necessary resources at hand to complete the task. Now, in project proposal, if you don't have, if you don't have the necessary resources, so perhaps you might have link, no, to a stakeholder, no, or you are going to look for partners for them to provide you the necessary resources you want, no, that you need, or necessary resources you needed. But here in the action plan, if you could actually do that one as well, but in action plan, if you don't have the necessary resources at hand, so what you are going to do? So what you are going to do if you don't have those necessary resources? So if they are not available, then you need to make a plan to acquire them. So another plan for acquiring the necessary resources in your action plan. So you are going to make a separate plan for that. Next is that you are going to visualize your action plan. So meaning to say, it's not just simply a plan. So you have to create something that everyone can understand, a glance that can be shared with everyone. So it is something that is a summary, no, a summary wherein um, everything is there, and then once you visualize your action plan nicely, then everyone can understand even just a single glance on it. So example for this. So we have here a business plan, no? Um, an action plan, which is actually in a business um, field, no? So you could actually use the template. And then action plan for marketing, for example. So we have there the marketing objectives, then the task, then the task owner, the time frame, the resources, the budget, and then of course um, the comments. So for example, in the comments section, you're going to write there if it is already completed, the task is already completed, partially completed or not. So that is more on the last part of your action plan, especially if you're already starting doing your action plan. So we have here strategic plan or strategic action plan. So here you have to write at the top do your goal, and then your um first action step, second and third, and then you are going to also to um you are also going to include there, no? Okay. So another one is corrective action plan. So here in this template, so perhaps you could have some corrections if you wish that you're going to change um, the flow of your plan, then you could actually do that also. So the last step is you are going to monitor, evaluate, and update your action plan. So once you already started implementing your action plan, so you have to monitor that one. And then, of course, upon monitoring, you are going to evaluate the progress of your plan. Then, mark tasks that are completely done, just like what I am actually talking about a while ago in, for example, here in the comment section, no, in the action plan for marketing. So you could actually you could also make your own template. Make sure that when you're going to make your action plan uh, visualization, make it sure that everything is there, no? Okay, so there. Now, since action plan or project plan and project proposal are quite similar, no, in, for example, because both both are actually done for a certain purpose, which is the main purpose is to accomplish something. So, but what's the difference between an action plan or a project plan and a project proposal? When we say project plan or action plan, it is a document outlining how a project will be implemented. Again, in the project proposal, of course, it also shown there how the project will be implemented. But the difference is that it is a document used to request funding to implement a project. Okay, so meaning to say that um, in action plan, in action plan, you did not actually we are not going to include there a request, no. We are not requesting there for funding, no. We're not requesting there for funding, especially the action plan. The action plan is quite smaller. For example, what I am trying to say is that the outcome or the result is quite smaller compared to a project proposal, because when you say project proposal, it is something in a bigger scale already, especially when we're going to talk about on the result of the both na the both concepts, the action plan and the project proposal. So perhaps when we say action plan, so you're just trying to, shall we say, as a smaller picture, no, a smaller picture or a smaller, shall we say, output, a specific output, no, that you're trying to accomplish. But when we say project proposal, it is already in a bigger scale already in terms of results, no? Okay. So we could actually compare action plan and project proposal based on audience. Okay, based on audience. So one big difference between plan, no, between plan and a proposal is the people who read them. Okay? So internal project implementers or officers read project plans. External donors or evaluators read project proposals. So that's very, very clear. Again, internal project implementers or officers read project plans or action plan. External donors, okay, or evaluators read project proposals. So as in all writing, it is important to take your audience into considerations in word choice and topics covered. Okay, next is purpose. So, project plan, now, project officers need the project plan to inform their actions in implementing the project. So that is project plan. Donors need a proposal to make a funding decision. In other words, when you are going to propose to make a project plan or an action plan, so you are just informing on how to implement a certain project. So when we say project proposal, you are actually presenting a certain document wherein a certain person, a certain donors in particular, a stakeholder, a partners, that when they are going to read your proposal, your project proposal, that is their basis of this making decision as to they are going to fund the project that you are proposing to them. Okay? So project officers will want to look for technical details like deadlines, deliverables, resources, etc. Evaluators will need some of this information as well, but only to evaluate the cohesiveness of plan, not to act on it. Evaluators also asked another question, which implementers typically do not. Okay? So for this, proposals also need to provide a broader rationale for their project and why it is so important. Okay. So next is the tone. So they also differ in tone. The tone which sets the mood or attitude of the writing in both plans and proposals are often very formal. Plans are typically formal documents with an impersonal tone that focuses on the technical details, while proposals still should be formal, but also can experiment with more personal tones. Proposals convince donors to take action. Okay, to accomplish this, they can be written as an emotional appeal, a factual argument, an optimistic vision for the future, a dire warning of the current situation. So that is a proposal. So the tone of the two are quite different. They are both formal, no? However, the proposals are quite more on emotional appeal because they are seeking for donors. They are seeking for a certain institution or organizations to fund their project. Last one is they also differ in message. A good project plan explains how the project will be implemented. So, the strategy on how the project will be implemented. So, that is a project plan or an action plan. But when you say a good project proposal explains why the project will be implemented. So they vary. Now, because when we say project plan or action plan explains how, so meaning to say the steps, how the project will be implemented, while the project proposal explains why the project should be or will be implemented. Okay, so the difference here is very slight, but this shift in tone and writing style has a big impact on applications. So understanding this difference and implementing it will improve your both plans and proposals. So those are the difference between this action plan and project proposal can be differentiated through these four areas: the audience, the purpose, the tone, and the message. So these are the references that I am actually using in making this PowerPoint presentation. And this is also for me not to be charged for plagiarism, right? So thank you so much for listening. God bless and stay safe, everyone. I hope this video will help you in understanding the letter of intent, the project proposal, the action plan, how to write them. Okay? So, God bless everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.